How we feeling, everybody? Let's see. Oh yeah, he knew he was being filmed. Like again, he's just a very charismatic man. Wow, that's a very dapper suit. He has a very good way about him. He's again, like he's not kidding about studying at Harvard, Yale, Stanford. Like he's a very well educated individual. Um, And oh, thank you, done randomly. I wouldn't say that I am a fine YouTube channel. I am the scuffed, simple-minded version of Dr. Richard Wolf. Okay. Um. Uh. Let's see. Rallies are for engaging his base. Trump was never going to have an issue getting those to vote. Um. Friday's Eve. So the obvious question is, what does Trump say in his rallies that hasn't already been reported? I mean, so like I've been noticing this conversation going on in chat for a little while. My position is just that like I've tried to sit through Trump rallies. I find them immensely boring and mind numbing and kind of just infuriating to watch because it's just watching him lie and grandstand about issues. Um, Similar to the interview that we did yesterday, and I'm gonna say yesterday, even though it was at like 5 a.m. this morning. But similar to that interview we saw yesterday with that woman who was just throwing out scare words and buzzwords. I have no interest in watching people just be wrong and feed other people lies. Like I do understand though that watching like a Trump rally does give you like a sense of how enthusiastic his base is. I think that under normal circumstances is valuable like information to have. However, I think that it's a bit skewed in 2020 given that there is a significant difference between Democrats and Republicans when it comes to um, believing the pandemic is something to take seriously. Um, like Democrats are obviously not going to show up to a big rally and like in the same kind of numbers and in mass if they believe that there's a deadly pandemic out there that could kill them. Whereas Republicans generally don't think that this is something to worry about. They don't think it's something to worry about because at the rallies, Donald Trump repeatedly says, you know, we're rounding the corner on this, even as he's in states where people are catching coronavirus in record numbers. So, like, yeah, I've listened to a lot of Trump talking. Like, I've been doing this now for the last couple months, and I've listened to a lot of Trump talking, so I have a pretty good idea of where he's at. But I also think that like gauging the enthusiasm for the candidates from them this time around, given the circumstances, is going to give you some skewed data. Um, Bill loves Monica's couch. I'm going to say couch instead of what it actually says. Um, Anybody see Corn Pop? I think Corn Pop passed away, actually. Very sad story. But the death rate is right down. Check it. Well, the death rate for coronavirus in the United States is 2.78 or something in there, 2.75. And that might not seem like a lot, but if everyone in the entire country catches it, that's still like millions of people dying. It's not good. Like Trump talks a lot about the amazing therapeutics we have. I need to and he talks about how they're like a cure. I need to clarify for you that therapeutics are not cures. Um, yeah, rounding the corner, says the president. Well, 500,000 people are infected over the past week. It's going to disappear like a miracle, says president who spent an entire month at the beginning of the pandemic's outbreak doing nothing. Um, I mean, you could talk about like how he said he divested from his companies and his holdings, even though he didn't. Talk about that. I mean, like part of the problem with Trump is like the whole issue of like, oh, which lie do you want to talk about in depth? Because there's literally like tens of thousands of documented lies from Donald Trump. Um, well, Century Dish. We know that Trump might not have been lying about that Hunter Biden laptop because the documents sent to Tucker Carlson, like the only existent copies of the damning evidence against Hunter Biden that Joe Biden somehow spirited away with his ghost spec op soldiers. All I know Trump helps the economy and makes my pockets fat. Like I barely walk. That's how fat they are. I mean, North's. Oh, Joe snorts Hunter's cocaine. Uh, Dope username. First off, and B, I would just say you might personally have benefited from a Trump presidency, and I understand if that's the case. There are some people who have personally benefited from a Trump presidency, but the wider economy is not in a good spot at all. Like I believe last month there were like 40 million people who weren't going to like who aren't able to pay their rent. Like you understand how bad it is for the economy if all of a sudden like 100 million people or like 50 million people even suddenly become homeless. You understand how bad that is, right? Because we're on like the verge of that in the United States. And we have been for the last several months. Oh yeah, El Shakala. Yeah, the links don't work in chat. DM one of my mods, and they will whisper it to me, like sweet. They'll whisper sweet nothings into my ear. Okay. Um. So you want to open up again, like Trump said? Well, I actually think that opening up again might be a bad idea. I think that we should actually have a federally coordinated lockdown. I think that that would be much more effective. And we could do it in such a way that like doesn't lose people money. It could be subsidized by the government to make sure that people, don't get kicked out of their apartments or their homes or lose their businesses, etc. I think that we could do something like that. Oh, I mean, like here's another lie told by Donald Trump. This is a good one. Uh, California requires special masks that can't be removed. Uh, President Trump came up with a brand new COVID related falsehood on Wednesday during a campaign rally in Arizona, where he basically claimed that people in California are forced to wear a special mask that cannot be removed under any circumstances. Now, I know people who live in California who have seen this article and are like, no, they're not, obviously not told that they have to wear a mask at all times. And it's not like a special permanent mask that's like hot glued to their face. Let's. Does it have?
ABC Wash. I get a fake poll. So we're one up in a real poll, or even, or whatever, but we'll end up winning it. But I get a poll. ABC Washington Post, they're fakes. Trump, 17 down in Wisconsin. 17. Think of it. And they tried it last time 4 years ago, too, and that didn't work out too well. It's just unbelievable how dishonest the media is. I say it because
They don't all have masks. This gentleman up here is not wearing a mask, and while this person has a mask, they don't have it covering their face. But anyway, continue to cope.
there they are, just very dishonest people. With Sleepy Joe, there'd be no graduations, no weddings, no Thanksgiving. They're already talking about no Thanksgiving. And in California, you have a special mask. You cannot, under any circumstances, take it off. You have to eat through the mask. Right?
Yeah, the special mask that you can't take off that you have to eat through. Those well-known Californian invisible masks that people have to wear at all times. Good grief. Liam One Loop, you're really going to bat for this guy? You're really going to bat for this guy who's just blatantly feeding you bullshit.
Right, Charlie? It's a very complex mechanism. And they don't realize those germs, they go through it like nothing. They look at you with that contraption and they say, that's an easy one. I'll go right through with the food. Now, how about California, though, where you're supposed to eat?
Yeah, I'm not talking about the people who are standing behind him with or without masks. I'm talking, and keep in mind, they're only wearing masks because after, like, one of his rallies became a super spreader event, they had to start mandating mask use because, like, actual sitting politicians or former politicians started dying. Like, Herman Cain. But listen to what's coming out of his mouth. This is like invisible masks that you can eat through that California mandates that you wear at all times, and it's a special mask. It's a very simultaneously very advanced contraption, and it doesn't work at all. What is he talking about? Yeah, Trump let the states decide to enforce masks and lockdowns. He didn't have to do that. He should have had a federally mandated sort of program. Because obviously, if one state is shut down and the other state is open, you can just drive across state lines to go to the open state, which means that COVID isn't being cut down as much as it could be. COVID transmission is still happening. But if you have a federally mandated and enforced shutdown, you can shut down the entire country for 2 weeks, and then we can basically resume life as normal because we'll have all of the cases basically either in quarantine or in hospitals. It's not that complicated, and we could definitely do it. It's just people are dumb and buying what this rich asshole says. No, I don't blame the governors. I'm gonna blame the person who's in charge of the federal government's response, which is Donald Trump. Why would I blame the governors for not working together on this very important issue? Why wouldn't I blame the person who's in charge of the nationwide response to things? That's like a weird thing to latch onto. Yeah, there is no special mask that Californians have to somehow have that somehow no other state has. And Californians are not forbidden from removing masks under any circumstances. The state's guidelines for restaurants and bars clearly states that the guests should wear face coverings while not eating or drinking. All of this is just bullshit. Well, but he was also not... He didn't tell them to not have a... let's listen to his words again
Say
here.
it, because there they are, just very dishonest people. With Sleepy Joe, there'd be no graduations, no weddings, no Thanksgiving. They're already talking about no Thanksgiving. And in California, you have a special mask. You cannot, under any circumstances, take it off. You have to eat through the mask. Right?
You have to eat through the mask. That he didn't say you can't take it off to eat. He said you have to eat through the mask. I'm sorry. I'm not a soothsayer who's going to roll bones in my hand and look at what the fates portend is coming out of the mouth of this idiot, okay? He's saying what he's saying, and he means what he's saying. He's not a genius who's doing word tricks with his mouth. He's just an idiot, and the amount you people bend over backwards to accommodate him is ridiculous. And no, I'm not gonna blame China. Your idea that there is this idea... I mean, I will ban you if you say something awful, but you haven't said anything awful yet. You've just said something that's wrong. The idea that China manufactured this virus and then let it out on their own people on the off chance that it would infect the United States is really, really, a insane take to have. You realize that, right? It's absolutely, bug fuck insane. You're just wrong and your idea is stupid. And also, like, the idea that even if we accept that that's the case, that um, by some miracle that they released. Yeah, I believe in science, and science has shown us that they are not like genetically modified organisms. It's just a virus that got out. But even if we take your premise as what actually happened, it is not on China to protect the United States from a pandemic outbreak. It is on the United States and the people we elect into office to protect us. You wouldn't blame Canada if the United States got into a war and foreign troops invaded us and our country didn't do a very good job leading a military resistance to that invading force because Canada didn't come into the United States and protect us from foreign invaders. Like, whoa, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, obviously it's not Canada's fault for that. Obviously it's not China's fault for not protecting us. It's our fault for having such a piss poor response, and that should be painfully obvious, especially for the lead, like coming from the leader of the party that ostensibly says they're for personal responsibility. Oh yeah, and science does say a trans male is a male. COVID-19 could have saved Trump if he wasn't 85 IQ. Yeah, I mean, like, guys, if Donald Trump had a decent response to COVID-19, he could have gone down in history as one of the greatest presidents of all time. Like, no joke. And I hate the guy's guts. Everything wrong that he has done for like the past 3 years could have been erased by a good and overwhelmingly positive response to COVID-19. But he has at every single turn botched this beyond like comprehension. I agree, but it's somewhat China's fault for suppressing this information. No, we knew that this was coming back in December of last year, and then we didn't do any, like, instead of doing anything about it, Donald Trump removed, like, our science team that was in China instead of closing, like, travel loopholes from China. Yeah, travel from China was banned, but thousands of Chinese nationals still were able to use loopholes to travel to the United States despite the ban. And we also didn't even provide personal protective equipment to fly our American nationals back to the United States. So like every step of the way at the beginning of this got botched. And on top of that, after travel from China was banned, we didn't do anything for an entire month, which that month was very valuable time during which we could have, like, for example, locked down the people we brought back from China. We could have quarantined those people. We didn't even do that. So this is how it spread at the beginning, and all of that is very intensely the fault of the president who defunded the CDC, who has repeatedly defunded the CDC even during the pandemic, and who removed a lot of our early warning signs, a lot of our scientific cooperation with China. A lot of that's on his doorstep. And yeah, I'm not completely excusing China either, but it's not. I cannot say that it is China's fault that we have boggled our response to this to such an extent that we have hundreds of thousands of people dead. That's not China's fault. That's our fault. If China, of all the countries in the world, China is the most effectively locked down country. And it's not because they're a great country, it's because they're an authoritarian country who can, like, lock people in their homes using military force. Okay? Like, they're fine now because they quarantined their areas, infected areas, very efficiently and effectively. And I don't think that China's a great country, but one of the perks of authoritarianism is that you can do things like that. So yeah, actually their lockdown was way more effective than anything we've done in the United States. Again, you can't blame China for not protecting the United States. You have to blame our country for not effectively locking down and destroying our early warning systems, because we knew and we had early warning systems in China specifically for stuff like this. Pelosi said come to Chinatown for New Year's. You know what? Funny that you bring that up, Bertu will, because I actually had someone bring that up yesterday. So let's take a look at this. Let's take a look. I found this video, this handy thing from the recount. It's a little a debunk video about dancing in the streets of Chinatown. Let's figure out if this is how this actually went down together, shall we? Thank you for the transition, comrade.
As the number of coronavirus deaths in the US continues to rise, President Trump has repeated a peculiar lie about a political opponent.
Nancy Pelosi was dancing in the streets in Chinatown. She wanted to go, let's go out and party. She's dancing in the streets of Chinatown.
It's when Trump is criticized about his coronavirus response that he looks to deflect blame, in this case onto Democratic Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi.
In February, Nancy Pelosi said we should come to Chinatown. We think it's very safe. Come here.
The first part is true. On February 24th, Pelosi visited San Francisco's Chinatown to promote tourism.
We should come to Chinatown. Precautions have been taken by our city, but we think it's very safe to be in Chinatown.
But Trump likes to do two truths and a lie.
Come here, let's all have the big parade, Chinatown parade.
She never said that. He could be thinking of the Chinese New Year parade, which happened weeks before. The next time he says it, he replaces parade with
parties in Chinatown. She was having parties. Let's all go to Chinatown. She wanted to have a street party.
Then it's a rally.
She's having her rally in Chinatown.
Meanwhile, unlike Pelosi's imaginary Chinatown rally, Trump was holding actual rallies in the days after Pelosi's visit.
And so far, we have lost nobody to coronavirus in the United States.
Finally, his story evolves to
dancing in the streets in Chinatown. Let's dance in the streets of Chinatown. Let's dance in the streets of Chinatown. Dancing in the streets of San Francisco, in Chinatown.
His Chinatown attack is ridiculous and sounds like a racial dog whistle, because back in February, people were still shopping and going to restaurants. We weren't social distancing yet.
The risk to the American people remains very low.
The CDC guidance at the time was don't panic and wash your hands. The campaign trail was still on.
We have now won the Nevada caucus.
I was still working inside the recount office and taking my son to our neighborhood playground in Chinatown. When Pelosi said come to Chinatown, it was still 5 days before the first US COVID death would be reported. That same day, Trump tweeted that coronavirus was very much under control. And the next day, while visiting India, he praised China, saying,
I've spoken to President Xi and they're working very hard. I think he'll be in pretty good shape.
It's become typical for Trump to take the very things he's criticized for and try to flip them onto his two favorite targets, the Democrats and China, while throwing in several lies just to make it interesting.
And she's dancing a month later. These people are sick. Anyway.
So, I just have to say, right, I'm really glad that this was brought up, because here's the thing. You guys were doing exactly what Trump was doing. You're taking the fundamental question of our COVID response and saying, oh, but Nancy Pelosi did blah. Well, I don't care what Nancy Pelosi did, because Nancy Pelosi isn't the president and doesn't have the sweeping powers of the president. Nancy Pelosi is head of, like, the House in Congress. I don't care if it's a man-made China virus. I don't care. And also, I don't believe that it is a man-made virus, because you know why? Pandemics happen all the time without it having to be man-made. Like, you realize that, right? Like pandemics happen. That's why most governments in the world have specific branches of their government dedicated to dealing with public health. And in those departments, they have sub-departments that deal specifically with pandemics. So when Donald Trump takes $300 million from the CDC, it leaves us very vulnerable to things like pandemics. When Donald Trump takes research teams out of foreign countries that we have determined might be hotspots for new pandemics to arise from, that becomes a problem for our pandemic response. When Donald Trump throws out our pandemic response playbook, and says, "Oh, we're gonna come up with something new and better," and then doesn't, yeah, that's our fault. Well, okay, but China also like pan. Okay, chemical weapons don't have anything to do with man-made viruses. Those are viruses are biological. Like, and it doesn't matter if it's man-made or not, because our response to it, which would have drastically cut down, unless you're saying that China has somehow infected the United States with a very unique strand of this virus. Unless you're saying every other nation on Earth has a much weaker version of the coronavirus, and they're just getting like the baby coronavirus, and we're getting the Chad muscular, thick, veiny virus. Okay, yeah, China might do that, but it doesn't have, like, you don't have evidence that this is a bioweapon implemented by China to attack the United States. Or you're saying it got out by accident, in which case it's just a normal pandemic. Apart from telling everybody to wear a mask, what would Biden do better? Well, Biden could implement a federal lockdown. There could be plans to more efficiently fund our hospitals and get emergency relief out there. Right now, there's a lot of economic incentive for you not to stay at home and not to isolate yourself. There's a lot of economic incentive to go and work. And that's part of the problem, because going to work spreads the virus. Not having proper funding for your schools spreads the virus in your schools, and children are excellent vectors for the coronavirus. There are tons of things that we could do to make the spread of the coronavirus much slower, or we could even implement a national lockdown to prevent the spread of the virus. You know, only have the necessities open, and subsidize the economic cost of that until we lift the lockdown. There are things that we could do, and like, yeah, if you look at the Ebola outbreak under Obama, like, one person died with Ebola. And remember how much fear-mongering there was about Ebola? One person died. 225,000 plus people have died from coronavirus. And it's not because of our response. It's not because of anything China did. It's not because this virus is uniquely deadly in America. It's because our response has been so piss poor. And you guys can't even wrap your heads around this. But countries in Africa, the entire continent of Africa has had 36,000 deaths. The entire continent of North America has had over 600,000 deaths at this point. Like, it's a lot more contagious is why. Look, all I'm saying is, if the entire continent of Africa can do a better job dealing with COVID-19 than the city of New York can, like, again, the entire continent of Africa has less deaths than the city of New York. I think that maybe that's a sign that our response is to blame for how bad it is here. Has a lot more to worry about than COVID. I don't know, dude. I don't know. I feel like a disease that can kill hundreds of thousands of people in America is a pretty Chad disease that should probably be worrisome to Africa, unless the reason it's so deadly here is because of the ineptitude with which we have addressed it. That's why Republicans are ridiculously inept. That's why. It's not a big secret. That's the reason.